It's out while he's out in the wild.
There's a phrase. Hi, I'm Matt.
I'm Amelia.
And this is Be More Picard, where it's our continuing mission to seek out new ways to better ourselves by boldly talking about Star Trek.
And today the stardate is 78572.7. And today we're going to go for a Picard-heavy episode as he steals the show as everyone's favourite unsuspecting action hero, defeating the bad guys while wearing riding boots in a way that would get Jilly Cooper flustered. This is the one and only Starship Mine. Let's engage. Rightio, we'll go for a warp speed rundown of this episode, so remind us what happens, Matt.
Yeah, so the Enterprise pulls into the space car wash for a full baryon scrub, and as usual, Picard can't get a moment to himself. To avoid an awkward reception, Picard grabs his saddle. Of course he's got a saddle on board. He never knows when he's going to run into Captain Levoir again. Terrorists take the ship, and Not Tuvok attacks Picard because he hasn't become his final Vulcan form yet. He gets easily taken down by Jean-Luc Picard because, ho ho ho, I've got a hypo spray. Picard becomes stranded and the ticking clock begins. Riker uses the cheat code of Commander Data to distract Hutch and create a small talk feedback loop, but then his beardy sense starts to tingle. Something is not right. Sure enough, a trap is sprung and only Picard is left to save the day. Hansina Gruber hasn't done the tiniest bit of research into the ship she's stealing and doesn't recognise one of the most famous captains in Starfleet. She then makes the classic baddie mistake of explaining her plan out loud. The green wall of death creeps along and Picard breaks out his crossbow to start dishing out arrows to the knees and punches to women, showing that he's an equal opportunist when it comes to a good fight. Back on land, Data saves the day, as per usual, preventing Picard from getting a baryon enema. As we alluded to a lot in there, this episode is very reminiscent of Die Hard from the 80s. I blooming love Die Hard.
I love Die Hard, and you know what? It is, to me, the ultimate subtle homage.
Yeah, yes, because we do get there's the obvious things like Jean McClane was, this is what a TV dinner feels like in the ducts, and we spend a lot of time in the Jeffries tubes in this episode.
More time than we've ever spent in Star Trek before.
Well, yeah, especially in the Next Generation, because they do, like Voyager, they're always in those Jeffries tubes, but Next Generation, they don't seem to spend a huge, it's more about being in the engineering bay. They kind of moved away from it for, never quite understood why. But out in the corridors, which is where they spend a lot of time in TNG, Picard can't get a moment to himself. Everybody's coming up to him with his problems, as per usual. At least this time they're not bothering him where his dirty laundry is.
No.
They've got the good grace to do it in the corridor.
It's out while he's out in the wild.
There's a phrase. Yeah, so that they're accosting him in the wild, and all of a sudden a wild Data appears.
The lesser spotted Data.
The lesser spotted Data, but leave it to Data to find a brilliant point to make in the mundane humdrum of everyday life. Because aside from the small talk that they have in the in the turbo lift, not an elevator, Data makes the point that a change is as good as a rest. Because
prophetic, don't you think?
It definitely is. But I just want to speak on that for a moment because it is a phrase that if you're strung out on a lot of things or you've been working on something for a very long time, you will often hear people say to you, a change is as good as a rest. And in this case, it's kind of like a little holiday that they're going on. And I don't know about you, but I always find if I'm going on holiday, I need 2 days afterwards to have a holiday from my holiday because it's so exhausting. If you're just getting a quick change in routine, like let's say that you work in an office job 9 to 5 every day and then at the weekends you record a podcast, that can be quite a welcome change in routine.
Definitely. And I don't have to do more washing at the end of it. So
yes, how many episodes can we get away without washing these jumpers? Because I'm so afraid they'll shrink.
But, I know. Your mum put them as hand wash only, by the way.
Yes, I know. But leave it to Data to find the lovely humanity in everyday situations that we've just, Picard has become so, I'm so fed up of people coming to me with all their problems all the time. And Data is always just there with isn't this brilliant?
This is wonderful.
This is wonderful. Aren't you humans fascinating?
He's just so positive. And I think that that's a moment where I would like to be more Data. And always I look at Star Trek and want to be more Data just because of his positive spin on everything.
He's always got a smile about things and will always, as we even said in our episode on The Measure of a Man.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to dealing with Bruce Maddox, Riker when he's depressed at the end, Data is always got to kind of like, but why can't we just be happy about these things? So the crew are then off to one of the most dreaded things that you'll get in any calendar, which is an enforced work social event. And I'm not saying there are definitely reasons for these things to exist, but it's
and
not.
You can have fun at some of them. Some of them can be absolutely fantastic.
But I do find myself dreading some things now and again, especially in a work context like this, where you don't know people and you've got a lot of unexpecteds about to come up. And this,
you haven't jollied yourself up.
Exactly. And this is why several members of the bridge crew start to try and get out of it.
Yep, they start to look for reasons to get out of it. And then you see the first one, Worf. He takes the initiative and says, Captain Picard, please may I be excused from this. I really don't want to go. And Captain Picard, in that moment, has a think about it and says, yeah, sure, let's go. I think because it meant that the episode wouldn't actually happen.
You are excused, Mr. Worf, because if you come along, this episode won't work.
Exactly. And then, of course, when Geordie goes, but what about me, sir? What about me?
Too late, mate.
Too late, mate.
Too late. He was doing that. Oh, I don't think I can get out of this. It's always worth asking your boss if you can go and do things.
Yeah,
you never know. And it's all but something that I have definitely learned is don't do it in earshot of your colleagues.
No,
because if, as we see here, and
this is quick.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that comes with the pressures of command and going for leadership, which is something that we talk about on this channel a lot. But if you give one person some leeway, now everybody else is going to start expecting it too. Thankfully, Picard is able to just
shut that down.
Shut Geordie down straight away and just go, no, mate, you should have asked first. He asked first. Be quicker next time.
I had one free pass and I've given it.
But the reason that they're all trying to get out of this is because they are going to going to a function, going to an event with Commander Hutch. Now, a bit of a confession here. When I first watched this episode as an adult, I couldn't see much point to Hutch. I thought that he was a very kind of one-dimensional, he's a plot device, he's just something for Data to play off with his comedy relief, because anything that gives Data the chance to start pulling facial expressions, more of that, please.
Loved it.
But then when we got to talking about it in the production and takes 1 and 2 of this episode, he is actually, there is more of a point to him than just somebody who feels that he has to fill space the whole time.
No. So to me, I saw somebody, as you said, who's looking to fill the space. I also saw someone who is essentially talking and not being that very self-aware. And self-awareness is probably one of the reasons why he's never made it beyond Commander, but also why he's in the position that he's in there, because he's obviously someone who is able to talk to anyone and everyone, but also is only needed to talk to anyone and everyone for a short time beyond the pleasantries. So even though they might be bored, senseless with him, actually, he's still doing very vital work. He's not causing any diplomatic incidents. He's giving everybody a nice, jolly time while they wait for the space car wash to do its thing. And I think that's an amazing thing that Star Trek have done, that there is a place for him here. He might not be the most brilliant, the most self-aware. He might have some soft skills, but have not elevated them to the level of diplomacy that Picard can offer. But there is still a place for him, because you put him as the attendant at the space car wash, great. Put Picard there, he's going to cause an incident.
He would be an absolute nightmare. No. He'd be offering out everybody that comes along, anybody who's got a kind of like, I don't think that that's how we should do that, Jean-Luc, actually. You are welcome to test that supposition at your earliest convenience. No, mate, you're the attendant of the space car wash. Sit down. That's not your job. You're quite right that it's almost like Starfleet have identified that this guy is a space filler, somebody who can't stand the sound of silence and needs to fill every moment with as much chat as possible. And
non-offensive chat.
And it's non-offensive chat. And I've definitely come across these people in my real life before and found myself getting irritated because, for a start, I don't know if you've noticed, but I like to talk myself. And I often have things to say. And with these people, you often can't get a word in, as we see with the crew.
You see this as well. With us, if I go, Matt can't get a word in. And if Matt goes, I can't get a word in.
Which is why we wouldn't be good at this job. But he is exactly where he needs to be. And he just goes to show that no matter what your personality type, what your skill set, as long as you are dedicated to what you're doing, there will be a place for you somewhere.
In Starfleet.
And so even he's not a captain, even characters like Hutch can still serve as ways to inspire us to try and be better about ourselves, because he's, we don't know his character arc up until that. I'm sure that there's probably about 14 novelizations where he turns up and saves the day with his space car wash.
Here's hoping.
I mean, but you don't know what life he's had that's led him to that point where he's developed, where he feels the need to fill the space that much, because nobody is born speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
No.
It's often a learnt behaviour, perhaps from trauma in the past, from a bad experience or two. But even people who have been through that, as long as you dedicate yourself to the right things, there is still a place for you in the world. There is still a place for you in Starfleet, and everybody is included. And that is one of the things that we want to keep trying to get back to with this show, is ways that we can inspire, ways that we can improve ourselves. So even characters like Hutch are a way that we can do that. So while Hutch is definitely in his right place, Data has been told, if you want to learn small talk, mate, which is adorable, Data always wants to be more human, even though if you watch our episode on The Measure of a Man, you'll see me arguing all the way through that he's already far more human than the rest of us. But he wants to learn small talk, and Hutch is a master of small talk.
It's a sign of good breeding, they say.
Yeah, apparently so, yeah, being able to talk to anybody at any level. But he's also a bit of a story collector in that, he wants to say, I've met you, I've met this person, I've taken that. So once he's kind of met Picard's been trying to get out of it, and as soon as he sees his opportunity, you've got horseback trails.
Oh, he's off.
I am gone with that, but at least... Hutch invited him, at least Picard turned up in the first place.
Exactly. He was incredibly gracious to do so, but then again, he knew he had to.
He did. But unfortunately, Hutch kind of accidentally dangles the Englishman's dream in front of... I know he's French. He's written as French, but come on. He says, we've got horseback trails. It's a miserable day. The weather's rubbish and there's nobody out there. As an Englishman, you go, I'm sorry, what?
Hello, what?
That sounds amazing.
This sounds amazing. Let me get my cagoule and my saddle. There is no bad weather, only bad clothes. Let's go.
Yes, exactly. So that puts Picard back onto the Enterprise. And he stumbles across the terrorists setting up their evil plan. I just want to make a very small point about naval protocol that they've all kind of abandoned here. If you're on a flagship, to leave the bridge unattended with no officer on it, no ensign, no nothing, is a huge... if they'd have just followed procedure... None of this would have happened at all.
How could that have happened otherwise, though? I mean, we get the foreshadowing of Picard stroking his ship and, oh, I love my ship. Oh, isn't it lovely? But if it's going for its baryon sweep where it's going to kill all life, surely there must be a exception to protocol, or some contingencies put in place where the bridge is done last, and then so they move to another part of the ship, then move forward.
If instead of doing the sweep that way, you're right. If they did the sweep that way, the bridge would be done last, and you could do the engineering section first. Turn your power back on and beam people off the bridge. We're not going to start second guessing the plots of these things because you could rewind. Because if
you want to have a go in the comments, that is great. We are happy to chat to you.
I can already think of 5 different ways that they could. Battery packs must exist. They've got transport enhancers. Leave somebody on the bridge until the last second. Beam him off. we're getting into the weeds of rebooking Star Trek here, which,
I don't think Paramount are going to be very happy with us.
Yes, I'm sure that they'll be going like, oh yeah, we'll take notes. Yeah, shut up, you English buggers. But Picard gets back onto the ship. The trap is sprung for various different reasons. And he comes into contact with, like I said in the Warp Speed rundown, not Tuvok. I'd completely forgotten that it was Tim Russ that was in this episode. I was very much the Leonardo DiCaprio meme when I was watching it a few weeks ago and he came back and was, it's him! Because I've just finished watching Voyager again.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I was like, he's already in the marquee! He's in the marquee! He's in the marquee!
It's Tuvok, not Tuvok!
Yeah. But he makes the mistake, and the reason that I bring him up is he makes the mistake of calling Picard's bluff. Picard captures him. Yeah.
Why do that?
Points a phaser at him, and not Tuvok says, you're Starfleet, you won't kill me, and that won't work in here anyway. Speaking to Picard's resourcefulness, which we'll do a little bit more on later, he'd already noticed that you guys haven't got weapons, but you have got laser cutters, and it's a laser that cuts things. That'll probably hurt you. And again, Tuvok continues to call his bluff and say, you're not going to kill me, you're Starfleet, you're not going to kill me.
He's baiting him at this point.
He is. He's basically daring him to do something. And something that I love about Picard is that he potentially will kill you, because over the course of this episode, does he maybe allow 3 or 4 people to come to their own deaths? But he does everything he can first to avoid that. And he goes, you know what? Actually, you're right. I'm not going to kill you. Doesn't mean I'm not going to incapacitate you, though, with his little hypo spray that he's found.
No, exactly. Although, you know what? That's one of the key things about martial arts, actually, is it's not about the fancy high kicks. It's not about looking good. It's all of it, whether it's karate or Krav Maga, which I spent a year learning Krav Maga. So, try and fight me.
I won't annoy you.
See what happens. Anyway, so one of the things that they teach you in these martial arts is actually how to avoid having a fight and how to avoid, actually hurting yourself. So you're more likely to hurt yourself if you go for a high kick or if you go for a knee to the nuts anyway. So one of the things that you'll learn is how to neutralize the threat in the most energy efficient way, in the way that hurts you the least, to neutralize the threat and run away. And that can be as simple as just getting someone to the floor, just so that you can run away. And I see that in this instance.
Whenever I used to have play fights with my cousin, he would just scream, bigger, older, fatter, and sit on me. And he won every time, because he was right. He was bigger, he was older, and he was fatter than I was. So what choice did I have? Because I'm not big and strong. He does get himself captured. And there are other instances where other characters get themselves captured. And I'm thinking specifically of Will Riker here. Every time that Will Riker gets himself captured, he stands there and he goes, Riker, William T, number 524347.1.
That's military training.
It is, and he's just going through you're getting my name and rank.
And that's it.
And that's all you're getting from me.
Because that's what they train them to do. You get my name and rank.
It is. Whereas Picard...
Oh, he lies. He tells a big, dirty, stinking lie. And he shows that, he is much of an actor. He might tell you he's not much of an actor, but that's just acting. He starts to go, I'm just Mott. I'm just a barber. I'm nobody special. I might pee my pants. I'm so scared right now. I'm just going to sit and cower in this corner.
And he's taking advantage of the fact that terrorists in every universe never do the basic bit of research that they need to do first.
Why?
Because if you're stealing the flagship of Starfleet, it is on you to learn who the captain is and at least what he looks like. You'd think that they'd have at least learned what the main bridge crew look like first, so that they know if something goes wrong, they can immediately see what the threat is going to be. If a Klingon comes around the corner, we're about to get beaten up. If an android comes around the corner, we're about to be logicked to death. If Geordie comes around the corner, just wave a pretty girl at him, and that'll distract him, because Geordie, a girl, and
doesn't know how to talk to girls.
No, but he wants to, so he's off. This is basic research that they should have done first, along with telling each other what the plan was, so that they didn't have to keep explaining it out loud continually all the time, and making sure that they all knew what the exit plan was was, because if they'd have all talked to each other beforehand, they might have found out that actually she's planning on killing us all and backstabbing us. And I'm going on a bit of a rant here, so I apologise. Thank you for coming to my TEDx talk on how to commit an evil plan properly. The baddies in these things are just so frustratingly unorganised.
So unorganised. And the stupid thing is that, are you telling me that Space Google isn't a thing at this point?
So if they'd have done that tiny bit of research first, they would have recognised Picard, but thankfully they don't. And the fact that he's able to sit in this situation where, I mean, when he first gets captured and he comes up with that little lie, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what their plan is, what they're there for. And if it was me in that situation, I wouldn't need to be acting scared. I would be just out there going, please leave me alone. Ah.
There would be a puddle on the floor.
There definitely would be a puddle on the floor. But he is mentally strong enough and prepared enough that not only can he think of the lie quickly, he can act quickly as well, even though he's not much of an actor. But he's also, like, any room that Picard's in, he's like, there's an exit, there's a tool, there's this, there's that,
He's watching it, and I kind of think that it's a bit of a benefit at this point that he gets captured, because he gets to spend some time with the bad guys and find out what their plan is, and he's probably not too mad at that point being captured, because he knows where all the exits are anyway. He knows that there's just got to be a diversion for him to get out. And inevitably, he has the faith that a diversion will happen. And if not, he'll create one.
Yeah. Yes. And so he does manage to get away from his captors and everything, because I think we're gonna keep staying on Picard. We're gonna fixate ourselves on Picard just a little bit more. But the fact that once he does escape and he starts to get his plan together, he doesn't fixate on one thing. We're fixating on him right now, whereas he's able to compartmentalize so well.
Oh, he's so good at it. So, I mean, one of these things is that when you're in these situations, in a stressful situation, you can quite often find that you get fixated on this one thing, but he keeps multiple pots on the boil and he stirs them as and when he needs to. And this is actually a very human failing that can happen when you get fixated on the one thing. So there's this amazing book out there called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. In this instance, he uses the example with pilots. So they'll have a problem with the plane and they'll go, oh, I don't know, this flap in the engine has a problem. Oh, I thought I spent just 2 minutes trying to fix it. And then moving on to the next point in the protocol of when the plane's going down. But actually the black box, obviously when the plane has gone down at this point, picks up that they weren't actually spending 2 minutes on this thing. They were spending 15 because they've lost all sense of time and perspective. And I think that's a huge thing about Picard, that he's been able to rise above that and compartmentalize.
As I believe it was you mentioned in the second attempt at this episode, because he's a pilot,
yes,
he was a helmsman,
yes,
so he's probably quite aware of that. He's able to pull lots of different pieces of information from his life.
And history, it seems.
Yes, so he will have been aware of pilots getting fixated on things because he has been a pilot himself.
Definitely. Thank you for raising my point, by the way. I'd completely forgotten about that.
I am quite happy to remind you of the good things that you have done, because it tempers it out when I look back at these things in the edit and go, yeah, don't do that again. His compartmentalization does mean that he's not fixated on one thing, which means that he's able to work on several different plans at once.
Yeah.
And so many of his hobbies have extra skills when it comes to your ships being invaded, as it turns out. Now, thankfully, Worf has a small armory in his quarters, because of course he does.
Klingon, that's what they do. I mean, it's just decoration at this point.
And which Picard knows is there and allows him to be prepared for things, you know. So already in this episode, we've seen his hobbies, which we're not going to go on about too much in this episode.
They're vast.
But he has a vast collection of hobbies, which is great for your mental health. But his horseback riding, his love of chemistry and formulas, archaeology, he has a lot of experience with ancient weapons. These all come into play in this, and it can really make it, at some point, it really looks like he could give the Boy Scouts a run for the amount of different badges that he must have had on his sash at one point.
Goodness,
See, that was one of your points. points that I've just stolen myself because I quite liked it. Because I'm not Picard and I want to be more him, and I can't help myself. And basically, it's because what he's doing, and you see how I'm going to throw this back to one of your points now, he is outnumbered.
Yes, he is completely outnumbered at this point. And the thing is that when you're outnumbered, there is no point in trying to take on everybody at one point because you're just going to get wrecked. You need to start thinking more smart. You need to start thinking about strategy, how you're going to pick off the weak ones, how you're going to get yourself from one to the other. And I think with this one as well, he's knowing that he's going to probably end up be killing people as well. And he incapacitates them and let the chips fall where they may. And he's tampered with them. He cut the rungs on the lead up to the Jeffries tube. He's incapacitated the guy with a shot to the knee. The other, Tuvok, not Tuvok, he's incapacitated him. And
we have to assume that he got wiped out by the baryon sweep. We didn't actually see it. The guy that he tricks into getting slow-mo taken out by the baryon sweep, which, by the way, terrified me as a child. I don't know why. I have no idea. But this episode, I remember vividly watching it as a kid and being absolute, especially at the end when he gets trapped in 10 forward. Because I wasn't old enough to realise that they're not going to kill the main character in the middle of a series.
Sweetie.
Yeah. So I would, Picard.
Oh, baby. No, I mean, so I think I know why. I think I probably know why baby Matt was so terrified by this, because obviously I was watching as a much older watcher. So I think it's because you never actually saw what happened. You just heard the terrifying, blood-curdling screams, which was probably worse than actually seeing somebody just fizzle into nothingness amongst the green.
Well, it was definitely a cheaper way of killing people to
definitely
have a green wall kill them off screen.
There's a lot of things that we've learnt about Star Trek where they do a lot of things because they're cheap. And you know what? I don't hate that. I admire that level of frugality and scrappiness.
You know what? I think that there are so many similarities between Star Trek and Doctor Who, and I will keep coming back to these things because Picard does a lot of good Doctor Who maneuvers here. He tricks people into letting their actions be the thing that that kills them. He's like, I give you a chance. You could not be on my ship trying to steal the trilithium. You could not run away with the bomb at the end. If you hadn't done any of these things, you wouldn't have died.
You wouldn't be in this situation.
I didn't pull the trigger.
No.
Nobody did.
A lot of people will probably come to Doctor Who from their childhoods and now and not actually realise how old and a long-running series it actually is, and how Star Trek probably has taken some inspiration from Doctor Who.
I think that they've probably inspired each
Drink
other.
This tea.
Yeah, because there's definitely some shots in Doctor Who that you look at and go, you've just stolen that straight from Star Trek. And again, I'm fine with that because we can't complain about that because this episode that we're talking about right now is just Die Hard. Die Hard on a spaceship, which again, I'm fine with. I am on the autistic spectrum. I've said before, Star Trek has several repeating plots, and there's no problem with that because I love Blink-182, who have one chord sequence. They just change the key each time. So keep doing my favourite things just in a slightly different tweak and different style.
And that's good for you.
I am there for it. But like Doctor Who, something that we see in Star Trek quite often is we will see these characters trying to decide how far they need to go in order to save something. Yes. How many people do you need to justifiably kill to try and save the Enterprise here? Because I'll only make this point very, very brief, but something that must be in Picard's head.
Gotta be.
Even though he hasn't lived through it. And again, this is how Star Trek is like Doctor Who, because it is so wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. But the whole reason that they have peace with the Klingons is because of the sacrifice of the Enterprise C. Rachel Garrett sacrificed the Enterprise C in order to save what was essentially a Klingon fishing outpost. It was nothing that she completely wiped out the Enterprise for, because they know that oftentimes you do have to throw everything to save something that can seem really insignificant, just like a small amount of trilithium like they're trying to save here. It's no bigger than a briefcase, I think, what they're trying to get rid of. But small things, it's the butterfly effect, can have huge implications, and quite often you don't know what those implications are going to be.
And that's one of the things about strategic thinking as well, is that you're not just looking at it in a vacuum of, oh no, they've stolen this trilithium and off they go, bye-bye. It's what could that trilithium actually do? Who could they sell that to? And what could happen if that trilithium was used in a bad way? What war could that start? What diplomatic relationship could that absolutely ruin? So it's very much a, I've been talking about strategy a lot recently, with somebody who I'm mentoring, and it's zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in as to why this needs to happen. And I think Picard does that very, very well.
He does. He definitely does. And that's going to bring us on to, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the terrorists are not organised here. Whereas Picard has got himself one of the best trained bridge crews that's ever been seen. And we've not talked about them much because we kind of wanted to save them for this bit at the end, because I think that there are some great there's some great parallels to be drawn between the way that the terrorists organise themselves and the way that the bridge crews organise themselves.
Yeah.
And why just that tiny little bit of planning can make such a difference. The British Army have a saying, planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. And there's no better example than this episode, because the terrorists are completely disorganised.
Yes.
They don't know what the plan is. They don't know who the captain of the ship is.
They don't communicate.
They have to keep shouting bits of it to each other. Whereas at the end of the episode, we see the bridge crew. Okay, right, we're trapped. So they all contribute towards the plan. They take all of their different areas of expertise and meld them together so that everybody has got a part to play. They clearly communicate to each other exactly what is meant to be happening.
Quietly, and sometimes not even verbally as well.
Yeah, because they have these, the well-established patterns between themselves. And they're also all prepared to put themselves potentially in physical harm in order for the greater good. A mantra that comes out through Star Trek is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And here, the needs of whatever these people are trying to stop, if I need to get knocked out for 5 minutes first, fine, do it.
That's completely fine. It's like, well, the needs of the many outweigh my need not to be smacked in the mouth, but still.
And Riker quite happily takes one to the face.
He takes one for the team.
There's a lot of Jilly Cooper in this episode. If you need to put a plan in place and you have a large amount of people that you need to coordinate for something, communicate everything first, make sure that everybody's prepared and understands what they have to do, so that once you're actually on the job of escaping from the situation that you're in, because we're not going to be advocating for the bad guys in this episode, then you will have a much better chance of success with a lot more preparation beforehand. We've definitely found that the more preparation that we can put into producing these episodes, the better they go. As we've alluded to, this is the third time through this one now, so we're quite well prepared at it.
Definitely.
It definitely feels like it's gone.
We've learned a lot in terms of like the kit that we've needed. We cannot use my phone to put the mic into. We made that mistake twice. So yeah.
So let's start to look at the ways that we've identified that we want to try and be more Picard from this episode. Ways that we can improve ourselves and maybe things to try and emulate in our day-to-day life that we can take from this show.
Firstly, be gracious even when you don't want to be.
Don't explain your evil plans out loud.
Don't reveal more than you need to.
Pay attention to the direction of travel of the baryon sweep.
Outnumbered is not outsmarted.
Always keep a saddle on board, because you never know when it might save your ship. So if you get the opportunity to be more Picard,
make it so.
So easily gets taken down by Jean-Luc Blaquet.
That's what you get for trying to save the planet.
Right.
And scene.